Mark here for Mark 2.0. We have an iconic actress, Chrystee Pharris. You know her from Pierre Jackson, Step in the Movie, a whole list, whole string of hits. Goliath, you were in Goliath. You know, welcome to the podcast, Chrystee.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
We're just thrilled to have you on. Now, start out by telling us how you got into acting and what pursued you getting into the industry.
Well, I knew what I wanted to do when I was 4 years old. Always wanted to be an actress. My mother made sure that I was at the best schools and did whatever she could to make sure I was in all of the school plays and all of that great stuff, which was phenomenal. And then I went to Emerson College in Boston, graduated, moved to LA, booked 7 shows in 6 months, which was Sister Sister, Moesha, Seventh Heaven, Kenan and Kel, all these wonderful shows. And then I booked a series called Passions, which was a great run while it was on. So so I've had a great career, I have to say.
Where did you grow up? Are you from Las Vegas or are you from Ohio?
That's a really, really, really good question. So my Wikipedia says Ohio. So somebody put it on there. But I was born and raised in Vegas. However, both of my family on my dad's side and my mom's side are both from Ohio. So I claim both locations depending on who's asking and who's like, oh, Ohio, but that. I'm like, yeah. And then like some people like Sin City. And I'm like, yeah.
What part of Vegas did you grow up in? I used to live on over by Flamingo and Jones.
Okay, so I'm way older than you, I'm going to assume. I like how you shake your head. I lived off of like Tropicana and like Torrey Pines.
Oh, okay.
Or Rainbow, like right near.
Yeah, I know right where that is. It's not far at all.
Yeah, that's what I was like. Oh, what school did you go to?
No, I only lived there for a year. I'm from Michigan. I'm actually from the Midwest myself.
Okay,
so
that's why I was like, wait a minute. Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, but when I was growing up, it was like, they even have the stuff that they have now. So,
okay, so you grew up in Las Vegas, and how long did you stay there? Were you there right up until you headed off to Massachusetts, or?
I was there until I was a junior in high school, and then my mother. Where are you from?
I'm from.
I know you're Michigan.
I live in small town Ontario, Canada, outside 2 hours east of Toronto.
Okay.
But I grew up in New Jersey in a town called Glen Rock. And I lived in Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
So
all right.
All over.
So then you might be familiar with the casino that was opened up in Connecticut. So that was in the 90s, and my mother at the time, they weren't really putting Black people, especially Black women, in a leadership position, in a supervisor position role. So the opportunity came up to open up these 2 casinos in Connecticut, and she flew down there, became a supervisor, and trained everybody and wrote the manual, and it was amazing. Except for her, it was amazing. For me, I hated it because I went from being in Vegas, which is very diverse and multicultural, to growing up in Connecticut. I mean, going to school my last year of high school there, which I thought was the worst thing that could have ever happened to me. And I just wanted to kill her.
Wow. Now let me ask you something. You were in that movie, that TV show, the Peter Engel TV show, City Guys, with Wesley Jonathan. And then you were also in with him on Step in the Movie.
Yes, and we listen, there's more. Let's see.
Okay.
So the very first show that I did with him was City Guys. That was the very first show that I ever did. Then we did Step in the Movie. So the first one, it was just a love interest, a little flirt. Step in the Movie, he was my boyfriend. The third project we did, we played divorcees. We divorced each other and hated each other. And then the last show, which is our current show, is Craig Ross Jr.'s Monogamy, which is on Amazon, Amazon Prime. We play where we did not know each other, but then almost had a threesome, sort of. But then we decided that that was not who we were, so we decided not to go that route.
Wow.
So, yeah. Now, and when I say threesome, like a pod, the new thing that everybody's talking about, pods, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. But hey, yeah. So we have gone through a roller coaster of relationships in our years.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about Hollywood. Now we're talking about on film. We're
Yes,
not talking
on
about
film,
real life.
on film. He's a happily married man with an incredible, beautiful daughter who I just adore. So I just saw them. Oh, I just saw his wife and daughter about a week ago.
Mark is going to be going off on all your career. I'm more interested in hearing the backstory. I'm always
Yes.
interested in hearing about backstories. And you talked about moving from diverse Las Vegas,
Yes.
where I imagine it's white, it's black, it's Hispanic, it's Indian, it's
everything.
the mosaic.
Yeah.
And then you find yourself in Connecticut,
Yes.
which is unless you're down, unless you're down by the docks somewhere. Connecticut, that's where Yale is. This is lily white.
Yes.
How diverse was your high school in Connecticut?
It wasn't.
Would you be the only student of color in a class?
Yes.
Okay.
In the classes that I was in, yes. However, that was kind of sort of the situation in Vegas sometimes because I was in advanced classes. But the difference in Vegas was like I was class president and I went to, even though it was a predominantly white school, we still had a great portion of people of color. Okay. And everybody got along. You know what I mean? You know, everybody, and that was during a time when even interracial dating was a little still taboo, you know, but people got along. When I moved to Connecticut, thinking that I was going to have the same experience, I didn't get along with white people. I didn't get along with Black people. The only people that I had that were my friends were the theater people. And that's because everybody was in their own little world. When even during that time, you know, being the, you know, LGBT community was taboo as well. So you didn't talk about those things. So, and we're talking about the 90s. So it was a different time. It was very hard. And it was hard for me because I was so used to having so many friends in a good way, you know, not like, oh, I'm popular, because I wasn't a cheerleader that was popular in that way. I was just the person that everybody could come to have a conversation with, whether you were a cool kid or a not so cool kid. I was the one that built the bridge between the two people, or between the two groups, or the Black and white group, or the kids that were popular and non-popular. I was that girl. I tend to love everybody. And then moving to Connecticut, I was like, oh, I hate everybody here. Like, I didn't get along with anyone, not Black, not white. No.
Not gay, not straight, not.
The gay community was very embracing because we all were in the theater department together.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, but they were not the kids. It's not like it is today where you can say, hey, you know, I'm LGBT, you know what I mean? Like,
and then it was just There's something I want to tell you.
Yeah, I don't even think they were even doing that. I think everybody was just doing everything in the closet. You know what I mean? Because it was just extremely taboo. It was taboo to date outside of your race. You know what I mean? Like it was you saw it and but it was still people giving you the looks, you know what I mean? So it was just a different time period. And I want to say though that, it's I'm happy to see things have changed a lot, because what I found was that I had a lot of friends that wanted to commit suicide or were hurting themselves in different ways because they weren't able to be completely honest. You know what I mean? And truly be themselves. And that's not just in the LGBT community. I'm just talking about in general. You know what I mean? Dating outside of their race or just whatever the case may be. And I'm glad things have changed a lot since then, thinking back on it now,
Now, growing up, did you have any influences like media wise, like watching TV shows or anything that encouraged you?
Yeah, I mean, that was a time when Cosby Show was on, and Different World was probably my favorite show.
Did you ever watch What's Happening? I was a huge What's Happening fan because
Oh my
people always
gosh.
say Different World or Cosby, which no disrespect to them, but it happened even before that.
Yeah, What's Happening? It's always funny because a lot of those people are my friends now. And so it's funny to like watch these shows and then that you grew up and you're like admiring them and their work and then they become your friends. It's like, oh my God, Roger, you're my friend. You know what I mean? It's like, that's so awesome. Sure. Yeah, so.
Amazing, because now you're living in LA. Mm-hmm. And how do you find that, contrasting it to your experience growing up in both Las Vegas and Connecticut? Is it in
Boston? Yeah.
It kind of strikes me that LA would probably be the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I mean, and then I went to college in Boston, which had its own issues. Yeah.
Boston has a reputation, a wonderful reputation. I'm a hockey fan, and PK Subban. I don't know whether are you familiar with PK Subban?
I am not.
Okay. PK Subban is a Black hockey player.
Oh.
And you should have seen what happened when he scored the winning goal against the Boston Bruins, eliminating them from the playoffs, and the storm that erupted on Twitter.
Wow.
And I'm talking within the last 4 or 5 years.
Okay. I will definitely go back and look that up. Wow. Yeah. Boston was interesting. And without going to too many crazy stories about that, just the weather alone was just.
Oh yeah.
Like that right there just depressed me, So moving to Los Angeles, I remember the day that I got here was in August. And I remember as soon as I got into California, I was the happiest person in the world. And I remember losing like 15 pounds in the first 2 weeks of being here. And I don't know if it was from the excitement or just being on my own and trying to figure out how to feed myself, It was just like, I'm so happy and it's warm and everybody's so nice. And, it was again, being in that comfort zone of just being around people who care about you without looking at any of your background or your looks or your money. Or now you would think that is LA because that is LA. It can be, but I found a lot of incredible people who really looked out for me, who gave me a lot of wisdom.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think of LA, you think of a lot of people moving there like yourself, wanting to get into the industry, wanting to have their name in lights, so to speak. And for every one man or woman who makes it, there are 1,000 or more in behind them who are struggling in the industry, trying to build their reputation, their resume, and hoping for that one big break. And there are a lot of talented people who never get it.
And, the thing is that people in this business have to understand. I mean, there's so many wisdoms, things that little nuggets I can drop. You never know when your peak is going to happen. I mean, it could happen as soon as you get here. It might not happen until you hit your 40s or 50s. I mean, look at Morgan Freeman, who got his first break when he was 54. I was looking at the lady. Okay.
I was watching Morgan Freeman in the 1970s on the Electric Company.
Of course. Now I remember the Electric Company. Yeah. But nobody really, I mean, the Electric Company didn't even last. You know what I mean? It wasn't like Sesame Street. You know what I mean? So, and of course he did a lot of theater, but his first real big break was when he did that movie with Reeves, Christopher Reeves, the one that played
Superman.
Yeah, Superman, the one that played Superman. So say that again.
What was his first big break?
He played this, he played a pimp and Christopher Reeves is in, I can't remember the name. You could probably Google it.
I'll look up, I will look up Morgan Freeman and Christopher Reeves, and you can look up PK Subban.
Yeah. So you don't know when it's going to peak. You also don't know what's going to be popular at the time. 1 minute, it could be the young kids are popular. The next minute, it can be like we've seen a surge of older actors making TV shows and movies. I mean, look at Grace and Frankie, you know what I mean? Or the Comiskey method. It's like all of these older people are now becoming popular again. So you don't know, or it could be, Black Lives Matter happened. So it became about, Black actors becoming huge, and then it's a Hispanic, and then so you don't know when your time is going to be, and you have to just kind of stick it out. And you also have to find, you have to be multifaceted, I guess would be the word, because you can't just do one thing. You can't just be an actor. You might, like I do, I'm an actor. This right here that you see, this is my vocal booth right here.
Okay.
I do voiceovers. I do a ton of voiceovers. I'm directing now. I produce. You can't just stick to one thing, because if you stick to one thing, you'll be sitting around. You could possibly be sitting around and waiting for your turn, or you might hit a peak and then it might slow down, and then you don't know what else to do. And that kind of happened for a minute, where I hit a peak and then things kind of went in a different direction when reality shows hit. So, I had to figure out what was going to be my new niche, which became voiceovers, which I've been doing for over, 16, 17 years now.
The amount of talent you have is incredible. I've noticed back when I was growing up, there tended to be a distinction. There were stage actors, television actors, and movie actors, and you had very little movement between the different camps. It was unusual. I saw an interview with Michael Landon one time, and he had wanted to get into movies, and they said, no one's going to pay to see you. They can see you every week on Little House on the Prairie. We don't want you.
Yep.
And now the industry has changed so much.
Yeah, because when the strike happened, everybody was just trying to get in where they could fit in. And that's when you started to see movie star actors do television, and then they jumped to commercials, and then it became, so voiceovers and animation, whereas people didn't cross over. But when that strike happened, a lot of people were out of work and people started to cross over.
When was that strike? What years are we talking?
2008.
2008, okay.
It lasted for 9 months, and that's when the reality shows hit. Mark, you look like you're about to say something.
Well, no, I was going to say one person that comes to my mind that's multi-talented and doing everything under the sun nowadays is Malcolm Jamal Warner. Look at him.
Yeah. I mean, he does it all. And his career has lasted,
Forever.
yeah, because usually when you're a kid actor, because I have some friends from like the Goonies, or one friend from the Goonies, and a couple of other young actors who never were able to cross over. You know what I mean? They weren't able to get out of that little kid role. I know so many, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. But Malcolm Jamal was able to keep going and cross over, and look at him now. He's on The Resident.
I'll take over. I have no
Yeah.
problem talking.
Go right ahead.
Now, one of the aspects of your career, you are in, and I love faith-based films. And you've given me a new one to watch.
Yeah.
Steps of Faith, where you played the lead character, Faith.
Yes.
And I love plays on words, Good Will Hunting, Steps of Faith.
Right, right.
And yet, I contrast that. I was somewhat surprised to find out that you were in faith-based films, because I'd watched, Mark sent me the link for your little self-promotional video that you did 4 or 5 years ago, talking about playing the 3 H's.
Oh, yeah.
And,
just for comedy, yeah.
And can you talk to us a bit about your faith and faith-based films and
Yeah. So, for that particular video that I did, that was for comedy, purposes. It was to get people to watch and to laugh and everything. I love faith-based films. And when this one happened to come up, it's probably, in my opinion, one of my best works to this day. And it's had over 20 million views so far. And that film was in 2015 is when it came out. And they just showed it at, Joel Osteen's church, maybe about 2 or 3 months ago. So it's still a very popular, film. Very simple, very basic, A storyline only. It's not like it's, B storylines and so forth, but people really do love it. Especially when I first got into this business, I knew that if I was on a show, there was somebody there that I was supposed to minister to. And I do believe that we're here to be a blessing for people. I do my best to try to make sure that I am a light when I'm on set. I try to make sure that I am consistent with every single person that I meet, whether it's, doing an interview on Entertainment Tonight or doing it on Mark, 2.0.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. It's about being a blessing and allowing people to feel worthy. You know what I mean? And I found, I just remember some celebrities, they would be very dismissive to their fans, to people who were not big time, interviewers. And I never wanted to be that way. I was always the person that would sign. I would be the last celebrity there signing autographs, because I wanted to make sure every single person got their time. It doesn't always work out that way. I'm sure I'm not perfect, because there are some people who are—
You're not perfect?
We thought you were. Come on.
Because there are people on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram who are can become kind of stalkerish, and you have to make sure that you're paying attention to people's habits, because they will sometimes believe that you are friends, and they will overstep their boundaries where it becomes kind of scary.
I'm sure.
So there's a limit, now that we have social media. But my whole point is that I feel like my job, my goal, and my faith in Christ that my job is to be as loving and as an example as I possibly can be. And I do it in a way that's loving without being judgmental and condemning people for not believing what I believe. My job is to be an example and leave it at that. It is up to you to make the decision because I am not God.
I was curious after having watched your I'm going to call it a self-promotional video, and I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Because the Hollywood industry, acting business is incredibly competitive.
Mm-hmm. And
it's
nobody's
really-
ever seen anything like that. People were just like, oh my God, that's so different. I
Yes.
actually watched the whole thing. You know, it was so
You know, you had it short, you must have scripted it, and
Mhm.
you did it wonderfully, and it's entertaining. And you basically say, I can sing, I can dance, I can, you're putting it all out there. It's wonderful. But I'm curious as to whether within the Christian community, did you get any blowback on it? Because
Listen, every show I do, I get blowback. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when I did Passions, you know what
Sure.
I mean? I did Passions that it had to do with being, you know, witchcraft. And it didn't matter that my character was a virgin and none of that mattered. It was the fact that I was on the show that was doing witchcraft and all this crazy stuff. And I thought it was very interesting because I had this pastor that I've known for a long time. My family knows them. And he's not a good man. You know what I mean? He's not a good man. He's not just horrible pastor. I don't even know how he's even, I know at one point in time, they were trying to get him out, but they can't because they didn't have enough votes and all that. So
Yeah,
he's there, you know?
politics of church.
Right. But he's not a good man. And I remember when I first got the show and, it's a church. It's a church that my great grandfather built. So in my mind, when I go to the church, I'm not looking for special recognition because everybody knows me. As a matter of fact, I don't even have a name. I'm either Rachel Campbell and William Campbell's granddaughter, Cheryl Campbell's daughter, Eric Campbell's. Like, I don't have a name. You know what I mean? They do not know my name. That's Rachel's granddaughter. You know what I mean? That's Eric's little sister. You know what I mean? That's Darlene's niece. You know, that's that TV actress. I don't have a name. So he actually, gets me to stand up, which I was like, everybody here knows me. What are you doing? Like,
yes.
And then he made a comment and he said, yeah, she's on that new show, Passions, and blah, blah, blah. And he said, watch what you pray for. And I almost said something but I had to think of my auntie that was sitting right next to me, because all I kept thinking was, I've brought a lot of people to Christ just from this show.
Yeah.
From interviews to magazine interviews to interviews like this, but we didn't have this back then.
Right.
But you know what I mean? Like I can't tell you how many not emails, because emails do not exist, letters that I received, or people who came up to me who said, I gave my life to Christ because I read an article that you wrote about such and such. I had one guy say, I was about to commit suicide, but something told me to open up this magazine while I was in line at the grocery store, which was a soap opera digest. And in it, it said, what CD are you listening to right now? And it was a gospel song called We Fall Down, But We Get Up by Donnie McClurkin. This kid who was like, I'm not even a Christian. I don't even believe in any of that. But I went and got the CD and you kept me from committing suicide. So for him to say what he said, when people are leaving the church, he can't even get people to stay there. but yet you're questioning my Christianity and my faith and my walk and what I'm doing. Shame on you, because you don't know where God is going to use you, and you should never judge where people are, because somebody could be working at a strip club and they might end up ministering to somebody. You just don't know, because I've seen it happen. I mean, I've seen some very interesting stuff. So with that being said, do I get questioned about what I do, especially being a Christian? Yes, even my own friends and people who are very judgmental, but they mean it in the right way, which is why I don't get upset about it. But you should never question what God is doing in somebody's life, because you don't know how they're using them.
That sounds kind of like the theme behind your steps of faith.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's exactly what the whole entire movie is about. That's exactly.
And I haven't even seen it.
You haven't seen it.
It's a great movie. You have to see it.
I've only seen the trailers. What's interesting is there is a movie that I did see that you know, like Christian Heap. And I saw him in A Man Called John.
Oh, yes.
And I'm going to put on my critic's hat.
Yeah.
And tell you that A Man Called John, I loved it the way I love my 8-year-old's drawings.
Well, again, it's a simple film. You know what I mean?
And the acting I found at times clunky and strained, but I will tell you the underlying story behind it.
Right.
And the message behind it, when there were those little lulls and those little, because when you watch a lot of Christian movies, especially if you watch them back in the 80s and the 90s,
right,
you'd sit there and go, please don't let this be too horrible.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I mean, but here's the thing. Here's to their defense. Listen, you might not like my movie, because my movie is it's simple. You know what I mean? It's a simple movie. It's not like, but they don't give money to Christian faith films.
no,
You know what I mean? You really are doing it out of love.
on a shoestring.
Right. And you sometimes you cannot overcomplicate a storyline, because you're going to lose the audience of who you're catering to, which is why you see, a Tyler Perry type show or movie, there's such a niche and there's such a big, huge following. Whereas, people who live in the industry would be like, oh my God, that's so horrible. But yet that TV show or movie has more viewers than this movie that you guys are raving about. You know what I mean? So I think the other thing too is I do my best to try not to criticize, because at the end of the day, and I mean this with any film, any film that I see, even when they're horrible, because they're horrible stuff out there. But I always have to say, but they got it done. Do you know how many of my friends who say they're a writer or a director or all that, and they never get it done? You know what I mean?
Yes.
They just talk about it. Oh, and then they want to criticize everybody else. So even if I have nothing good to say, I could always say,
You got it done.
at least they got it done. You know what I mean?
Well,
So
have you seen A Man Called John?
I don't think I had a chance to see it. And it's the same director.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
same director.
my favorite scene in that movie, it's about a white pastor who is too charismatic, too in the spirit, and they kick him out of the church, and the bishop reassigns him to a black church in a neighboring town. And the scene where what made me have to see the movie is watching a trailer for it. And he walks into a conference room where the church board is meeting, and they're like, can we help you? And there's this white pastor, and he says, yeah, hi, I'm your new pastor. And this woman faints.
Yeah. He put because I think he did that movie after we did ours, and he might have taken a little bit of that from ours, because when I walk up and I see him, I'm like, wait, you're white. He's like, I know. And I'm like, oh. I'm like, okay. And I try to turn around and, but so yeah, I mean, like I said, at the end of the day, he's a director that he literally writes it and then he shoots it. And I know so many people who have been sitting on scripts for 20 years, and I mean, shoot, I'm one of them. I have a script that I didn't write, but that was written for me, and I still haven't produced it yet, or, got up and directed. So I'm a part of that, which is why I try not to be judgmental about it, because I'm like, hey, at least you got yours done. Mine is still sitting here. You know what I mean? But I've been busy too. So
what's it like for the projects you have produced?
It's they all did pretty well. The one that I'm most proud of is Amy Victoria, which is the one that I directed, which is a short. So I directed, musicals and plays and stuff, but I'd never directed film. And we shot it during COVID, which was like insane. It was like the height of COVID, which means everybody was still stuck in the house. I mean, you couldn't go anywhere. So we sent the cameras to each person, and then they had to get somebody at their house or someone they trusted to do the camera work and the sound and the lighting. So, and I had to direct over Zoom. So that was already like mind, blowing to figure out how to do that. But on top of it, my two actresses were deaf. Now I have to figure out how to communicate what I need over Zoom while they're moving the cameras. And then sometimes we would start and then I would say, oh, cut, but they couldn't see me or they couldn't hear me. So we would have to keep rolling because, but it was fascinating. It was probably one of the most rewarding projects that I've done since the first time I started acting. That feeling of being able to get out of an actor what I know that they can bring to the table. And I remember watching the actress when she saw it, she cried. She was like, this is the best work I've ever done. So yeah, just when you start stepping into the producing and directing side, it's a whole nother beast and reward that I don't know. It's definitely an area that I'm moving towards.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now you've done stage, you have your own one-woman play, almost like a comedy routine. You're on television series, you're in feature-length movies, you're producing, you're writing, you're directing, you're probably involved in the editing.
Yeah, I did for the project that I did. Yeah. And then the silvers. Yeah.
What's your favorite on the performance side? Those are three different mediums.
Yeah.
Yeah. What performing, what's your favorite way to perform, on stage, on film, or on screen?
I like to be able to have a combination of both worlds. And so, I just posted on my Facebook the other day that I missed 4 camera comedies because that was hitting both worlds. It was being on stage and also, because you get to be in front of an audience and you're doing comedy all at the same time and it's still television. So that's probably what I love the most, because there's nothing like having an audience and that real reaction in real time. Yeah. Because you don't know how it's going to land when it's film, or even single camera comedy. You don't know how the editors are going to put it together. So you don't know if it's going to land or not. So yeah, there is something about having the live audience and the feedback that you get afterwards There was only one time I did a show that I actually forgot my lines. I was like, I have never done this. I cannot believe I forgot my lines. It was like 2015 maybe. And I was on stage and we were doing the prequel to Othello. And I was like, and it was me, it was a monologue. And I tried to start over. Yes, it was a monologue. And I tried to start over and I was like, thank you. And I just left the stage. I was like, I cannot believe Ted Lange, who is my mentor, who wrote it. I do all of his plays, but he played Isaac on Love Boat.
Yeah.
He was,
Oh yeah. We know Ted. We actually reached
Yeah.
out to him, his
Oh, you did.
publicist or agency, whatever his contact is on IMDb to get him.
I'm
Come
old
on.
enough to remember The Love Boat too well.
Oh yeah.
I've seen a lot of his movies. Yeah, he's unreal.
Yeah. Well, he just looked at me and says, "It happens, baby." And then we kept on going. I was like, oh my God, Ted. He was like, "It happens, baby." And that was it. And we let it go and moved on. So yeah.
Anyone who's ever done a stage play knows that lines get dropped, lines get forgotten, improv happens, and 99% of the time, the audience never even realized it.
I know, but they definitely realized
Oh,
there was no getting around this one. Trust and believe. I was like, oh, it is a wrap. Everybody knows. So
I was in a play one time. It was British, so I was speaking with my British accent, and then I actually went and dropped my wine glass, smash all over the floor. And I've been talking in this, Londonish accent for the whole play. And then I go, oh my God, I'm so sorry about that. Oh, I'm so sorry about that.
oh my goodness. Yeah.
Character happens.
Yeah, it happens.
But what are you working on right now? What's coming up?
Yes. So right now I'm doing a lot of voiceover work because I do voiceover work on different TV shows and films, like Winning Time, that's on HBO right now. I did that, All American and Spider-Man and Spider-Man Into the Universe and all those different movies and stuff. So some of them I can't talk about right now. That's why I'm talking about the ones in the past.
Yeah.
I still have Craig Ross Jr.'s Monogamy. That's on Amazon. If people want to, check that out. Also Goliath with Billy Bob Thornton. That's on Amazon. That's season 3 though, and they just dropped season 4. So it's an older series. And then I have a couple of things that I'm producing, and I'm sure I'm going to be directing something soon. So I'm in the works of kind of looking through that. But I'm also taking a little time off just to take care of me, which I've never done. I've been in this game since '96, and I've never taken a break before. So I think sometimes you have to take a break otherwise and explore the world and explore life, because I feel like your acting can get stale. So I'm taking a little time to do a little traveling and so forth and spend time with family. As you start
You went to Paris, France, and Italy on your own.
I know, I do that all the time. I'm good for just jumping on a plane and just say, hey, you guys, because you really can't plan anything in this business. You really have to kind of wait till the last minute, because oh, there's nothing happening, no bookings, I'm leaving. And I literally called some friends, was like, hey, I'm thinking about jumping on a plane tomorrow. You guys around? And they were like, yeah, come on. And so I just left. But I'm good.
I hate you for that and love you for that. I hate you because I'm jealous.
But you know what? Here's the thing. You just have to go, because you never have enough money. You never have enough time. You never have this. Oh, I don't want to go by myself. Oh, my family. Oh, this. Let me wait. There's so many reasons that you can give to not do it. And then when I started to see so many of my friends die or get diseases or things, it made me go, life is too short. We don't know what tomorrow may bring. I might not be able to, walk around Europe. So let me do it now while I'm healthy and can make it happen. And so I just kind of get up and go. I took my mom to Puerto Rico for her 70th about 2 weeks ago, just because she's never done it before. There's many places that I've been to around the world, she's never really traveled like that. And so I was like, let's go. It wasn't as easy just because she can't walk as much, you know what I mean? But just the experience alone was worth it. And but I also want to make sure that I'm doing it when we can do it. And so my point is don't be mad. This should be motivation for you to get up and just go. Buy a ticket. Go to Greece.
Carpe diem.
There you go. Absolutely.
But you do not belong doing voiceover work. You have far too much talent to be just a voice. You have a wonderful voice, and I can see why you get so much work that way, but you belong on stage, you belong on camera, you belong in the lights.
Exactly.
And we can't do this show, Mark, without talking about
What's that?
the YouTube channel. You haven't done it for over a year now.
Oh, the Black people shit.
Yeah.
BPS.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Tell people what it is,
Okay.
and then tell us why you did it and why you haven't done one for a year.
Right. So I was doing them prior. Before the pandemic, I would do these little shorts, little 1-minute pieces, and then they started to turn into 3 minutes, and people love them. They talk about this, it's This Week in Black People Shit, or, This Week in BPS. It's talking about what is trending in the Black community. So when we started doing it, we always had like this kind of satire, kind of sarcastic way of talking about the things that were happening in the Black community, especially with people getting killed by the police and, robberies, and just anything, things that have to do with movies and blah, 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 blah. I had stopped doing it because in the beginning, our numbers were super high. I would get a couple of thousand every time I would air it. But then Facebook changed their algorithms where you had to start paying. So my own fan base of the 10 to 15,000 that I had at the time stopped seeing them. They weren't getting them because I wasn't paying for them to get seen. And that became frustrating. So I stopped for a little while, and then right before during the pandemic, right before George Floyd got killed, I was like, hey, let's just do it as a talk show. It happened to be the same week that George Floyd got killed. So I think George got killed that Thursday. We did it on that Wednesday, or that, I don't remember, Monday or something. And then we did the show on Wednesday. So it became really popular because it was a safe place for people to talk about the things that were hurting the Black community, and talking about, the financial wealth and just all the things that were causing heartache in the Black community and what was trending. But part of the reason why I had to stop and why it was so hard was because every single week a cop was killing a Black person. And I always know that. There's a kid that just got shot in Akron, Ohio. He got shot 60 times by the cops just this couple of days ago, 60 shots. As he was running from the police, and he had no gun in his hand. They say he might have had a gun in the car, so we don't know. But he's running away, and they shot him 60 times. After a while, it started to play with my psyche. With us being stuck in COVID, people are dying from COVID. Friends are dying from COVID. Family is dying from COVID. George Floyd gets killed. Another kid gets killed. Rashawn gets killed. Another kid, adult male. Another female gets killed. All of these are killed by the cops. And the list just kept going on. And so every week it turned into us talking about somebody getting murdered from the cops. And in order to save my mental, because, and here's the last thing I will say about it. You know, I don't think people realize the significance of the George Floyd thing. We've always seen it our whole lives. You know what I mean? White community has never really, they're not paying attention to it. You know what I mean? They don't see it on the everyday. It's not, you know, it's not an everyday thing that they put on the TV and they see. We see it all the time. We've seen racism. We've experienced racism. I've experienced racism when I was in Boston and Connecticut and even in Vegas and everywhere. My whole life, the industry, my schools. We have learned how to suppress because you have to. I don't know if you've ever seen that Johnson & Johnson commercial where, you know, they have a talking with all of their kids, like, you know, you're so pretty to be Black, or don't talk back to the cops, or just, you know, you are beautiful, even with, if they say you're not beautiful, you are beautiful. So we have to suppress all of the things and the little microaggressions that we receive on an everyday basis. And you just have to kind of, it's okay, Chrystee, you could be okay. But when the George Floyd thing happened, and then you started to see all of the killings that were happening afterwards, it was like an open wound. It was like somebody cut open the wound and all of these feelings started to come out that we've always suppressed. And it became even more so depressing and hard for people. And that's all I'll say. Like, there was a woman who was in her 90s, a friend of mine's mom, and she just cried because she was like, this is, you know, how it was growing up as a kid. And I just had to get to a place where I had to stop because it was messing with my psyche. I was so used to suppressing it, but having to actually talk about it and deal with it on an everyday basis became a little bit too much. So
I want to bring you back, talk about, there was an actor we had on, I don't know whether you're familiar with him, Cameron Arnett.
not sure, but go ahead.
Anyway, he does faith-based movies. He was in Star Trek, Miami Vice, bunch of Hollywood shows.
Okay.
And then he started doing films with the Kendrick brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And I Still Believe with, I think it's the Irwin brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And we, in our conversation with him, talked about identity and brought it back to the fact that the world says things about a person based on color, appearance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they say things about a person based on faith.
Mm-hmm.
Christians get pigeonholed and are told, oh, you're Ned Flanders, you're whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And the simple fact of the matter is, in God's eyes, you're the most fantastic, worthy person. And I've had such a thrill talking to you today. And I feel like I know the real, a bit of the real Chrystee. I just wish we weren't meeting over Zoom. I hate Zoom.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
I know. But you know, one day we'll all be in person, and we'll be able to do that in person. And man, I was gonna, you ended it on so nicely, and it made me, but you said something that made me think about, but it might take it to a negative direction. And so
it's okay.
Yeah, go right ahead.
The thing with this podcast is, one of the taglines we talk about is we want to discover truths.
Yeah.
And truth isn't always pretty.
Yeah, you know, that was the other thing that was very difficult. You know, you bring up the Christianity. And during the George Floyd thing, it opened up wounds in the Christian faith in churches, because my pastor actually did 2 or 3 sermons on this whole thing, where, and my pastor is known all over the world. Like, he's such an amazing man. Incredible man. Huh?
You talked about a pastor before at your home church that you do not like. He's not a good man.
Oh, that's a whole.
That's
This
somebody else.
is now a different.
It's a different.
Okay.
Because that guy is not my pastor.
Okay.
This
Kenneth
one
C.
is.
Omer, Kenneth C. Omer out of Los Angeles is my pastor.
Okay.
And why my faith is as strong and why my ministry is because of him and his teachings and his examples. But when the whole George thing happened, the Black Lives Matter marches and all of that, and again, this man is known all over the world, and white churches and Black churches in Africa and London, and you know what I mean, and all these churches in LA, and Rick Warren, and you know, all these people that he's friends with, that he's like, you know, you guys call me to pray, you call me when you guys want us to come down and support you, you know, we sing at your church, we break bread together, but where are you when all of this stuff is happening to my people? Where is my Christian brothers, when you see that this stuff is wrong? Have you ever preached in your church that racism is wrong? And he had all these pastors on. I think Rick Warren was also on there, and, you know, and they were like, no. I also realized that there were no Black people in leadership. And some people were like, you know, we can't talk about racism. We would either lose half of our congregation, or I would get kicked out of the church. Like, there was one pastor who actually did get kicked out of his church when he talked about racism was sin. But his thing is that you guys are so worried about masks, but no one is worried about your fellow Christian brothers and sisters who are being killed out here in the streets by police. And so again, when I talked about, you know, having to take a break from doing Black people shit, Black BPS, all of that stuff was a part of, you know, the hurt that I received, because my friends who were Christians, who were white, did not understand any of that stuff that was going on. And it was very hurtful. It was very hurtful. It was the worst pain, because these people have been my accountability partners for years, and my prayer warriors. But when the Black Lives Matter thing happened, they had every excuse and did not understand what was really happening and the trauma that we were going through. And that was another reason why it was so traumatic. And it was very hard. It was very hard as a person of color. So yeah, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
No.
I want to lift things up, because I know I kind of dragged it down.
No, I dragged it down when you brought that up.
No,
Oh yeah, that was another part of the COVID stuff that happened when we were in lockdown.
No, but it speaks to your depth of character and the range you have. You know, you're more actors, and I'm an old school guy, and I noticed you did it once too. You refer to yourself as an actor.
Mhm.
But then when you were referring to the direction you were giving, you referred to the players as actresses.
Probably. I go back and forth. I just like, let me just, distinguish, so
I'm that old school guy who still calls women actresses and men are the actors.
Yeah, all of it works.
Yeah. But, actors need to explore the depths of their emotions.
Mm-hmm.
the highs and the lows, and you do it so enormously well. I cannot wait to see. I'm not into shows like Passions.
Of course, yeah.
It's not.
I don't even know if you can find it. Can you? It's not on any, a lot of
Find
your movies
anything.
are on streaming platforms. So, and one thing we forgot to ask, do you get residuals if we stream one of your shows? How does that work nowadays with the streaming platforms?
You know, it is a little tricky. We do and we don't.
Okay.
And unfortunately, when streaming became when streaming
Mainstream.
happened, we stopped getting residuals the way that we do. And the hard thing about that is, so we're basically, the way that it was explained to me years ago, I don't know if it's the same now, but we're still getting the same type of money that we were getting when they first discovered VHS tapes, were, you know, when they weren't sure if they were going to be popular or not.
Right.
So we should be getting paid way more. And people don't understand that, just like a music artist, if you don't pay for the music, the artist doesn't get paid. If you don't pay for the streaming, you know, or whatever the case may be, then we don't get paid. And a lot of times you don't work that often. So if you don't, basically, it's never about the initial airing. We really make our money off of when it airs again. And that is how we are able to sustain our lives. We can't sustain our lives based off of the very first thing that airs. It's about the residuals, but if your residuals are not getting paid, sometimes I've gotten residual checks from streaming that said 1 cent, you know? So sometimes we do make money off of it, you know, and sometimes we don't, but it's really more about what's on television and stuff like that. And hopefully people don't share their passwords on, you know, Netflix and all that kind of
Hulu
stuff.
and all that. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, because as you know, like I said, you might not work for 10 years. So how do you live?
Right.
You know?
All
Well,
right.
we really appreciate you coming on. Such an inspiring guest.
I really enjoyed this.
So did I.
Yes.
You touched on so much, and I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, you guys asked great questions. I've never been asked any of these questions ever, which is great. It's great.
And that's what most of our guests say. Like, I don't know if you ever worked with Richard Leacock, the actor.
Mm-mm.
But me and him did a promo, and he's right. He's like, well, we ask intelligent questions. We think outside the box. I mean, when it comes to people like musical guests, a lot of the musical guests we are interviewing were huge in the UK and other parts of Europe, and most people don't know them here.
Yeah. No, you guys, you took me down a road that sometimes I don't really talk about because people can take it out of context and people will hear what they want to hear. And so, but you know, I felt like it was a safe place, and you asked a real question, like, why haven't you done the show, and why this? And so that was great. And I really appreciate you guys reaching out too, and making this work. And just so you guys know, I was late to this.
No, you don't.
I was literally sitting here like, oh, okay, I got it in, 30
Yeah.
minutes. And then I got caught up, and then I was like, I looked down, I was like, oh, snap. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I know it's like really late where you guys are. So
No, we're
Chrystee,
fine.
I'm gonna end this on a good note. Okay. I want you to know, you've heard of the singer Taco, who sang
Putting on the Reds.
He
Yes.
was one of our guests, and then he's blowing up again, especially in Europe, where he's released a new album
Yeah.
after coming on Mark 2.0.
Viv Leacock.
Hot Summer Jams. Then we had Viv Leacock on. Viv Leacock has a leading role in the Hallmark streaming service.
When Calls the Heart on the Hallmark Channel.
Worldwide. When Calls the Heart.
Mhm.
9 seasons, but Hallmark wouldn't say whether they were going to renew it for a 10th season, even though it's their #1 show. And we talked about it with Viv. He said, we don't know. Are they going to renew? After Mark 2.0, Hallmark says, we're going for a 10th season. So what I'm saying is big things are coming in your career.
They already have, but they are.
Because you're coming on the Mark 2.0.
No, I believe it, because I could use a nice little boost. You know what I mean? I could use something new and exciting to pop up. So I believe it. And as soon as it happens, I'm going to let you guys know, and I'm going to come back on the show.
Appreciate it. Yeah. And subscribe, share we're on all the audio platforms. We're on YouTube for the video version, and we have it categorized on YouTube too under playlist.
Awesome.